Simple machines. A simple machine is a tool or mechanism that makes work easier by changing the direction or magnitude of a force. There are 6 kinds of simple machines: 1. The lever, 2. The inclined plane, 3. The wedge, 4. The screw, 5. The wheel and axle, and 6. The pulley. The force applied to a simple machine is generally referred to as the input force, while the force that it produces in return is called the output force. The mechanical advantage of a simple machine is the ratio of the output force to the input force divided by input force. The lever. A lever is a simple machine that consists of a rigid bar that has a fixed point around which it can turn. This fixed point is called its pivot or fulcrum. A lever makes work easier by producing an output force, also called load, that is greater than the input force applied to it, also called effort. The mechanical advantage of a lever is therefore equal to the load divided by the effort. Levers have 3 classes. These classes differ in the locations of the fulcrum, effort, and load. Class 1 levers are levers whose fulcrum is between the effort and the load. Class 2 levers are levers whose load is between the effort and the fulcrum. Class 3 levers are levers whose effort is between the load and the fulcrum. The inclined plane. An inclined plane is a simple machine that consists of a flat, stable surface that's tilted at an angle. A long board whose one end is positioned higher than the other so that it can be used for rolling things up and down on its surface is an example of an inclined plane. An inclined plane makes work easier by requiring less force to raise or lower an object than the force needed to lift the object straight up or lower it straight down. The trade-off is that the object being moved needs to travel a longer distance on the inclined plane than if it is just being raised or lowered vertically. The wedge. A wedge is a triangular tool that actually consists of 2 inclined planes placed back to back with each other. It is used in several ways: to split an object into 2, to separate 2 objects, to lift an object, or to hold an object in place. A wedge makes work easier by converting a small input force at its blunt end into larger output forces that are perpendicular to its inclined surfaces. The mechanical advantage of a wedge is equal to the ratio of its length to its thickness. To produce the same output force, a longer wedge that is thinner will require less force than a shorter wedge that's thicker. The screw. A screw is a simple machine that basically consists of an inclined plane that's wrapped around a cylinder. The screw converts rotational or circular motion into motion that follows the screw's axis, or axial motion. A screw makes work easier by producing an axial output force that's greater than the rotational input force. The trade-off is that the rotational motion at the input is longer than the linear motion at the output. This means that you need to turn a screw a few times to make it move forward a little. The mechanical advantage of a screw is equal to the ratio of the circumference of the screw to the length of forward motion produced by one rotation of the screw. Thus, the smaller the distance between a screw's threads, the greater is the screw's mechanical advantage. The wheel and axle. The wheel and axle is a simple machine that consists of, well, a wheel and an axle. It may also refer to a wheel that's attached to a larger wheel such that their centers coincide with each other. The wheel and axle works with rotational forces. The wheel and axle makes work easier by producing an output force at the axle or smaller wheel that's greater than the input force at the larger wheel. The mechanical advantage of a wheel and axle is equal to the ratio of the radius of the wheel to the radius of the axle, or the ratio of the larger wheel's radius to the smaller wheel's radius. The pulley. A pulley is a simple machine that consists of a wheel with a grooved rim around which a rope or chain passes. Pulleys are primarily used to lift weights. A single, fixed pulley can only be used to change the direction of the force but not reduce the force required to lift the weight. However, using a system of pulleys together will reduce the force needed to lift the weight. In a pulley system, the load being lifted is usually hanging vertically from one end, while the input force used to pull it up is applied at the other end of the rope at an angle. The pulleys are in between the ends of the rope. A system consisting of several pulleys makes lifting or hoisting of an object easier because the input force used in pulling the rope will be much less than the weight of the object being lifted. The trade-off is that the rope has to be pulled over a longer distance compared to the height by which the object was raised. Subscribe to KPluz now. Contact us at 02-7759-4144 and 091781277757. Thank you for